Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. Oh, sorry, I didn't.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Prabhupada Guru Maharaj. Prasad Mataji, when are you ready? You can start, Mataji. I'll share my screen.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Ashtaprayeshu Apatreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, text 37 to 48. Text 37. The action of the air is exhibited in movements, mixing, allowing approach to the objects of sound and other sense perceptions, and providing for the proper functioning of all other senses. Text 38. By interactions of the air and the sensations of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. By evolving of such forms, there is fire, and the eyes see different forms in color. Text 39. My dear mother, the characteristics of form are understood by dimension, quality, and individuality. The form of fire is appreciated by its effulgence. Text 40. Fire is appreciated by its light and by its ability to cook, to digest, to destroy cold, to evaporate, and to give rise to hunger, thirst, eating, and drinking. Text 41. By the interaction of fire and the visual sensation, the subtle element taste evolves under a superior arrangement. From taste, water is produced, and the tongue which perceives taste is also manifested. Text 42. Although originally one, taste becomes manifold as astringent, sweet, bitter, pungent, sour, and salty due to contact with other substances. Text 43. The characteristics of water are exhibited by its moistening other substances, coagulating various mixtures, causing satisfaction, maintaining life, softening things, driving away heat, instantly supplying itself to reservoirs of water, and refreshing by slating thirst. Text 44. Due to the interaction of water with the taste perception, the subtle element order evolves under superior arrangement. Hence, the earth and the olfactory sense by which we can variously experience the aroma of the earth become manifest. Text 45. Order. Although one becomes many as mixed, offensive, fragile, mild, strong, acidic, and so on, according to the proportions of associated substances. Text 46. The characteristics of the functions of earth can be perceived by modeling forms of the Supreme Brahman, by constructing places of residence, by preparing pots to contain water, etc. In other words, the earth is the place of sustenance for all elements. Text 47. The sense whose object of perception is sound is called the auditory sense, and that whose object of perception is touch is called the tactile sense. Text 48. The sense whose object of perception is form, the distinctive characteristics of fire, is the sense of sight. The sense whose object of perception is taste, the distinctive characteristics of water, is known as the sense of taste. Finally, the sense whose object of perception is order, the distinctive characteristics of earth, is called the sense of smell. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prashant Mate. Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu, whenever you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prasanti Mataji, for reading. And thank you, devotees, for coming and giving your time, giving me this opportunity to speak for my own purification. I'll start by offering prayers. Omakyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Te Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayati Girim Yatkripatam Ham Vande Shri Gurudim Taranam. Hare Krishna. So we are reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, and we'll continue from text 37. So just briefly, so far what we have read in this chapter is we begin with the introduction of relationship between Ishvara and Prakriti. Then we go on to understand how the Pradhan, that is the unmanifested form of material nature, is activated by the mode of time and turns into Mahat Tattva. And through Mahat Tattva, the 24 different elements are created. And yesterday, from Krishna Venu Prabhu, we heard so wonderfully about the different subtle elements that are created initially through false ego, which is divided into mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. And through mode of goodness, mind is created. Through mode of passion, the senses and intelligence is created. And through mode of ignorance is created the sense objects. And we started discussing yesterday. We took up the first sense object, or it's called Tanmatra or Indriya Vishay, which is also translates in English into objects of the senses. So we discussed about the sound element and how sound transforms into the first gross element, that is ether. Lord Krishna describes wonderfully in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 7, Bhumir api analo vayu kham mana buddhi evacha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakriti ashtadha. So these 8 elements that form the body, the material body, of which we've discussed 3 already, and actually 4, including ether, that is kham. So today, text 37 is going on to discuss the 5th element, that is vayu or air. So in text 37, Lord Kapila Dev describes that Vayu has certain properties. It is chalanam, which means has the ability to move things. Prabhupada describes wonderfully in the purport as well that it is because of the element of air or Vayu, the physical, the living entity is able to create motion or movement in the body. And we've learned through different readings in Bhagavad Gita how the life air or pran moves in the body in different places. With this, I remember one example that when Lord Hanuman was, in a small monkey form, and he looked at the sun and he approached the sun, thinking it as a fruit. And Indra, in response, he released his weapon and he injured Hanumanji, and that upset Vayu Devta. So in retaliation, Vayu Devta stopped the pran air or the life air movement, and all living entities in the universe were suffocating because there was no movement of this vital element, the pran or the life air. So that is why it's described here that the movement of the life air is very necessary for life. The other property of air is mixes. When there's a storm or hurricane, you see air creates a mixture of different elements called vyuhanam. It also, the other thing that the air does is carries the object of the senses. So coming back to understanding the movement of the air, in Ayurveda, according to Ayurveda Shastra, disease processes are defined usually into 3 types. I'm in no way a subject expert on this matter, but there is Vata, Pitta, and a Kapha. So the Vata element is the Vayu element that helps to create motion. So what we understand in modern medicine to be any diseases of the brain or the neurological system that can cause paralysis, madness, anxiety, that is attributed to the Vata or a Vayu element in Ayurveda Shastra. So if there is any disturbance in that motion, then we can have problems in these categories in the body. Prabhupada goes on to describe that the second line of the shloka, which says Nitritvam Dravya Shabdayo, is important because it describes that the sense of proprietorship over action is also due to the activity of air. So for a living entity, the sense of proprietorship that I am the doer also comes because of the Vayu element, the air element. And the air element also helps to carry the function of other senses or sense objects. So it's also called Gandhavya because like it can carry smell or odor as well. So moving on to the next text 38, we now go on to understand another tanmatra of that's actually of water. It's called touch. The tanmatra of water is taste. So by interaction of the air and sensations of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. So in Bhagavad Gita 15.8, Lord Krishna has described, Shariram yad avapnoti yad chapi utkramate shwaraha grihat vaitani samyati vayur gandhan ivashayat. That the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So another important function of the Vayu element, the air element, is it helps to carry the subtle body at the time of death from one body to another. And the purport Prabhupada describes that there are other elements that are involved, which includes destiny, touch sensation, and situation of the mind. So along with all these, with the vehicle of the air element, because of all these reasons, the subtle body is taken from one gross body into another gross. That's the first part of this shloka. In the second part of the shloka, the next element is described, which is anala or fire. With fire, the indriya vishay or the tanmatra is form. Moving on to text 39. Now, Lord Kapila is describing the characteristics of this tanmatra, which is form or rupam. So he describes that the characteristics of form are understood by dimension. So this tanmatra of form gives a certain dimension to any structure. It gives length, breadth, and height. What it also provides is it provides a perception of size and also provides individuality. Because there is a form, there is a certain limit to that form, and that does not mix with somebody else's form. In a similar concept of this, Lord Krishna describes in the 3rd chapter in Bhagavad Gita about Kshetragya, that we are all Kshetragyas, that we have knowledge of our own field of action, our own Kshetras, but I don't have knowledge of your Kshetra, and you cannot have knowledge of my Kshetra. But one personality, that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is Paramatma. He knows everybody's Kshetra because he's present in everyone's heart as Paramatma. But because of this individuality, there is restriction into our consciousness and makes us different from each other because of form. And the form of fire is appreciated by its effulgence. Prabhupada also describes that although forms, you can see them, but oftentimes you will not be able to distinguish them unless you understand their composition. For example, Prabhupada gives in the purport is when you see something white, some white powder in the kitchen, you will not know if it is salt or it is sugar or what. But if you taste it, and because analyzing the quality of that element, you will be able to understand, okay, this is a salt, this is actually salt, no, this is actually sweet, or this is sugar. So just by form itself, we sometimes are not able to understand the object, but because of its characteristic, we can understand. In text 40, Lord Kapila goes on to describe now the qualities of anala, that is fire. The properties of fire are Dyotanam. Dyotanam means it illuminates, it brings to light, it gives us knowledge, it tells us, takes us out of ignorance. Next is Pachanam, which is the ability to cook and digest. So fire is obviously used for external cooking. We cook on gas stoves and that helps make our food. But fire is also present inside in our body, according to Ayurveda Shastra again, and that is called the Jataragni, the fire, the digestive fire that helps us to assimilate whatever we are putting in, helps us to assimilate, break it down, and use it as energy source. Prabhupada describes in the purport again that the fire element is aggravated by bile, secretion of bile or pitta, according to Ayurveda science. So whenever people have disease processes and they lose their appetite or even thirst, somebody is not eating well, not having, not being able to drink a lot, not having enough nutrition intake, the Ayurvedic treatment is usually to increase the secretion of bile or pitta to counteract this. The other thing is that several also have sort of the fire component in them. So oftentimes when people are suffering from cold or in the winter months, we'll eat things or drink liquids which have like ginger or pepper in them, which are heat producing foods. So that also is described. Now, we'll going transitioning from to the next element, which is the water element, whose tanmatra is taste. So Prabhupada describes again in this purport that because the tanmatra of water is taste, it is important for water to be present for taste to be appreciated. That is why that we see the tongue is usually covered with water or saliva, and because of that, we're able to appreciate taste. And then Lord Kapila describes this, what are the different forms of taste that can be appreciated. They are astringent, like something that's very sharp tasting, like hing, madhura, sweet, tikta, bitter, pungent, sour, and salty due to contact with other substances. So these are the different forms in which this tanmatra of taste can be presented. But what is the gross element that's related to taste? And now we come to the element of, that is api, bhumir api analo vayu. So we've covered analo, vayu, and kham. Now we are discussing about api. So in text 43, now the characteristics of this water element is described. So one of the features of water element is it helps to moisten other substances. So oftentimes, when we are gardening and the soil becomes very dry, the seeds that we put in may not mature or fructify. So, but when we soften the soil by adding water, then the seed can nicely grow. The other important quality of water is this pindanam. It helps to coagulate or bring together a lot of different mixtures. A common example is when we have to roll atta, when we add water to it, and then it helps us to solidify and make a ball out of it. Prabhupada also describes in the purport that because of this nature of water, it is also an element that helps to bring together a lot of different elements that are present. Next thing that the water does is it causes satisfaction or triptihi. There's so many things that we drink and so many advertisements, and the cola companies advertise that you drink this and you'll be happy, and you drink this and your thirst will be quenched. At the end of the day, really what quenches thirst or what the body really needs is water component of it. That is why, when Krishna describes himself, he says, Rasoham apsu konteya. I am the taste of water. He doesn't describe that I am the taste of this, I'm the taste of some other drink. No, but describes himself as the taste of water, because water causes satisfaction. Another component of water is it is prana payodhanam. That is, it maintains life. And this fact is also recognized by modern scientists as well, because all our space research or exploration of life in other forms, we're all looking for water in different planets. Because we know that if we find water, it's most likely that we'll find life as well. So another important quality of water is it maintains life. Next, it softens things, it drives away heat, and also it tends to expand things. It can make things more. So when I was listening to a lecture, devotee was explaining that sometimes when we have big programs, and especially like in yatras and all, when you're cooking and you're serving prasad, and now like prasad the dal is almost going to get over, and they still have so many devotees to serve, then you take the dal and you add water to it, you add some salt and some chalk, and now you have more dal available to serve. So that's also a quality of water, that it can expand and make things in plentiful amount. These are the gunas, or the qualities of the water element. Next, from water, due to the interaction of water and taste, the subtle element of odor or gandha evolves under the superior arrangement. And then that is through that, the bhumi element of the olfactory sense also becomes manifest. So the smell element, that is the tanmatra of earth, bhumi, prithvi as well. Okay? And Prabhupada describes that odor can be, in terms of different types, can be mixed odor when we use different spices and we cook bhoga. Then we use different spices, so it gives a mixed odor to the food process. The odor can be offensive, usually from like filthy places like garbage, trash. The odor can also be fragrant. From Prabhupada gives example of camphor, menthol, fragrant flowers, or it can be mild, strong, acidic, and so on, according to the proportion of associated substances. So that's why the odor itself has different other qualities also. Now moving on to the gross element, bhumi or earth. So the characteristics or functions of the earth are: one, it is used in making deities. That is the foremost thing that's mentioned, Prabhupada describes. So earth provides us a lot of natural elements in terms of clay, stone, marble, wood, which can all be used to make different forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the purport, Prabhupada describes very strongly that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, according to our Shastra, has multiple forms. And these forms are all corroborated in our Shastras. And based on these directions under the Shastras, we create the different deities that we have in our temples. So these forms have proof in the Shastras, and they're not imaginary. Because oftentimes the Mayavadis will quote and say that all the forms that we see in this world, including the deities in our temple, are just imaginary forms. They don't have any basis to it. But here Prabhupada describes in the purport that no, the form that we see of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not imaginary, but it is mentioned in the Shastras and can have different forms. And we can have used different elements to represent those forms. So we see deities made of wood, made of marble, made of sort of mud and clay. And they're all authorized forms as according to our Shastras. The Mayavadis like to believe that everything, the form that we see in this world is just an illusion. They have this common saying in their philosophy that Brahman Satya, Jagat Mithya, that the only truth or permanent or absolute thing in this world is Brahman, but everything else that we see in this material creation is Mithya or false. It's an illusion that's created on the living entity by Maya. But that is not true. And that's what Prabhupada negates here. To this, I remember a funny story that a devotee had once shared in a class, that there was a Mayavadi guru, and he was preaching like this in a village. and he was describing to his students that, all the forms that we see in this world are just illusion. They actually don't exist. We think in our mind because now we are under the influence of Maya, illusion of Maya. That is why we think something exists, but it's actually only an illusion. So just when he was finishing his talk, all of a sudden there was a lot of noise in the village, and some people came running and they said, please run for your lives, get up and run for your lives. A mad elephant is coming in this direction. Everybody run, start running. So the Guru also told all his disciples, come, you have to run to save our lives. So they started running. Then the disciple, they stopped the Guru and he asked the Guru, Guruji, why are we running? You just said that this is an illusion. All the forms are illusion. So then what is the point of running? Nothing will happen to us. We'll be fine. We don't need to run. The Guruji was now in a pickle. So he told the disciple that actually, you know what? I know that this is an illusion. And now you also know this is an illusion. But that mad elephant, he does not know this is we are illusion. So he will come charging at us. So we have to run. So this, is another way to show that how false their philosophy is, how bogus it is. So that's why the first quality of earth or bhumi is it gives form to something. Second, Prabhupada describes it gives a place of residence where we can, where living entities can stay. Third thing it does is it bears or sustains all other elements. It holds or contains substance. So earth or bhumi can contain the water element, api element. It also makes other elements more visible. So water is usually very like translucent. Like you can sometimes not see if there's actually water or not. But if you add something to it, it changes color, then you can actually see water. Sometimes when the wind is blowing, you may not see or not realize is the wind blowing or not, or which direction it's blowing. So sometimes we, hold some mud in our hand and we leave it like this, drop it like this, and we see it's the mud is blowing in one direction. So then we realize, oh, the wind is actually blowing in this direction. So the other nature or the quality of the bhumi element, the earth element is it brings out it makes more visible the other gross elements that have been described. Okay. We're moving on to text 47. So now in the text 47 and 48, what's described is basically how each of these elements, they contain the gross element. The most gross the element is, it contains feature of all the other elements as well. So the tanmatra of kham or ether is sound, Vani. The tanmatra of air or vayu is touch. Tanmatra of fire or agni is form. Tanmatra of water is taste, and tanmatra of earth is smell. Now the earth element that contains all the other tanmatra as well. So it has smell, it has taste, it has form, it has touch. You can touch earth. It also has sound. When something heavy, something material drops, it will create a sound. But the element of gross element of water, it has the other four elements, taste, form, touch, and sound, but it does not have the element of smell. Water in itself will have no smell, but obviously if something is mixed in it, that can have smell. So similarly, Agni that is there, the Agni will have the tanmatra of the previous three elements, that is sound, touch, and form, but it does not have taste and smell. You cannot taste Agni and you cannot smell Agni. When fire burns something, you can get the burning smell of that particular thing. It burns wood or burns paper. That particular material element can create its smell, but on its own, fire does not have any smell. So similarly, go to air and ether. So in this particular way, this is the last shloka for this session today. Lord Kapila has described what's called Karana Srishti. So it's described how these different material elements, the 24 material elements, are formed in order to give rise to the material world. So it's called Karana Srishti. from next session onwards, what we'll be understanding from the other shlokas would be Kriya Srishti, how it's put into action and how it's put into works. When I was reading, listening to his Gaurang Darshan Prabhu, he shared a very interesting realization that sometimes when we read these things, this detailed analysis of the material creation, material world, we may find it boring, or we may find it like, how is that so much relevant to us? But it is important for us to understand. It is also important for Gyanis. It's a way for Gyanis to also understand and connect with the higher power. Because in material world, the scientists also do the same thing. They analyze all these elements. And I'm sure, at some point in life, like growing up through the modern education system, we've also been to some chemistry labs in schools and in colleges, higher education, and we've analyzed all these elements about water and different gases and different, other chemicals that are formed in earth, and tried to analyze them. But Gaurang Darshan Prabhu describes that most of this analysis is based on the idea or the conception of lording it over material nature. We want to understand the water element or the earth element or the Vayu element from the material scientist perspective, to understand is how I can control it and use it for my own sense gratification. Whereas the philosophy, the Sankhya philosophy that Lord Kapila is explaining to us, that philosophy teaches us how we can understand these material elements that can help us be detached from this material world by understanding how these different layerings are covering us. Also, these material elements have their origin in Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in that sense, this form of education, form of Sankhya philosophy of analyzing the material elements, is way different from the scientist, the material scientist analysis. Because in Sankhya analysis, we are trying to connect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and trying to understand how we can surrender unto Him and be connected back to Him again. In comparison to the material scientists, who are trying to understand how we can exploit this material nature and use it for our own sense. One point I'd just like to share, I forgot to mention when I was discussing the Vayu element or the Pran element, is that this again an interesting point I'd heard from a devotee in a lecture, which we can use for preaching, is about things that we eat sometimes also have the vital force or the Pran force in it. So that was one of the reasons he was explaining why, in terms of Ayurveda, a vegetarian diet is very important. Because when we eat things which have the vital force of pran or life air in it, we get that vital energy as well. So compared to things that we eat in a vegetarian diet, like if you eat tomato or potato, if you take the tomato and you put it in the ground, in the soil, you'll see it'll grow up into a different tomato plant and give rise to different things. And that happens because it has the Vayu component in it, the component that moves and grows things. So when we eat that in our diet, we get that vital energy as well. Whereas, if compared to people who eat non-vegetarian food, like meat or highly processed food as well, if you take a chunk of meat and you put it in the ground, it's not like something's going to grow out of it. So it's only going to smell bad after some time, because it doesn't have the pran or the Vayu element in it. So that is why, from an Ayurvedic perspective also, this the form of the Vayu element in our diet is very important for our spiritual understanding and growth. Sorry, this was a point I forgot to mention earlier. But that's all I had to share today. Thank you everybody for your time. Rantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chaitanya Prabhu. Wonderful class. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.